Welcome back. We're smoking all my dragons, divine righteous, almighty greats, overachieving, never slacking. Today we got the first people in the Philippines, 2021 genetic study. Now this is very interesting, seeing as how I've heard different things as far as with the Philippines. So hopefully this will maybe confirm some things that I've heard from my friends that are from the Philippines. And we're going to dive right into it. Original link will be in the description. Let's get to it. Here we go.
According to a Filipino legend, the first people to be made were Malakas and Maganda. According to the story, they emerged from bamboo trees and were flown to the Green Islands on the back of a bird. There, they became the parents of the Filipino people. But who were the first Filipinos? That is what we're going to find out today. If you studied in the Philippines, you may be familiar with the wave migration theory. It is commonly taught in the Philippines, or at least back when I was in grade school, that the Philippines was colonized by three waves of people. The first wave was the Negritos, the second wave was the Indones, a seafaring people, and the third was the Malays, the Iron Age people. This was the theory suggested by H. Orte Bayer, founder of the Anthropology Department of the University of the Philippines. As this theory was made in the early 1900s, most modern experts in the field dismiss this theory as outdated and favor more modern theories. Looking at more recent studies, we have both the out of Taiwan and out of Sundaland theory. These suggested that Austronesians that settled in the Philippines either came from Taiwan to the north and sailed to the Philippines, or Sundaland, an ancient landmass in the southwest that connected some islands to Borneo and mainland Indochina. These theories both have supporters and critics. However, recent studies show
I gotta say real quick, it's crazy that they would mention Borneo, because you guys know how you know my mantra was smoking all my dragons, divine righteous, almighty greats, overachieving, never slacking, and uh, I ran across something one time called, was it the dragon goddess of Borneo? Right, that was very interesting that I always think about. So when I hear him say Borneo, it just brings me to that real quick. Who knows? We never know what's in our DNA and why we are attracted to certain things. I just wanted to put that out there.
a story that doesn't neatly fit in any of these theories, either old or new. A massive study published in 2021 about the migrations in the Philippines in the last 50,000 years concluded, by analyzing the genetics of various groups in the Philippines, that there were five waves of migrations into the country. To understand this study, we need to go back to around 70,000 years ago in East Africa. Around 70 to 60,000 years ago, humans first went out of Africa. Some went west to Europe, some went to the Middle East, and others went north. We, however, are interested in the people who traveled to the east and into Asia. As they traveled to the east, they encountered their first major crossroad, the Himalayan mountains. As people spread out to the east, there were two main paths. Some humans went through the north, but other groups went through the south. Those that went through the south are known as the Basal Australasians. They are characterized by their darker skin color. Some of the Australasians stayed in India, while others migrated further east. Some went eastward enough that they reached a landmass called Sundaland, which is why they are called the Basal Sunda. Now, you might be asking, what is Sundaland and why does the map look so different? Well, around this time, the world was still in the middle of the Ice Age. This meant lower sea levels, which meant more land was exposed, and it meant that the world did not look like this, but like this. Now, some of the Basal Sunda migrated to the east to Australia and Papua New Guinea, but we are interested in those that went to the northeast, to the Philippines. Around 50,000 years ago, these people became the Philippine Negritos, the first Filipinos. Now, migration was largely possible because most of the Philippine Islands were interconnected around this time. The study suggested that there were two likely paths. The northern one suggests that some Negritos went to Luzon through the Palawan and Mindoro Islands, while the southern route was going through the Cebu Strait and to Mindanao. This also shows us that the Philippine Negritos were likely one of the first groups who learned how to sail the seas. The Negritos who went to Luzon are known as the Northern Negritos, while the ones who went to Mindanao are known as the Southern Negritos. These two groups constitute the first two waves of migration to the Philippines. Going forward,
They look like some of my cousins, honestly.
of thousands of years, around 15,000 years ago, another group of humans arrived in Southeast Asia. They are called the Basal East Asians. They were descendants of the people that traveled north of the Himalayas instead of the south, like the Australasians. As they arrived in Southeast Asia, some of the Basal East Asians went into Sundaland and the surrounding area. Around 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age began to end. This meant the icebergs started to melt and shrink, which caused sea levels to rise and cover the low-lying areas of Sundaland. This caused many groups of people to move to higher areas nearby or find new islands entirely. One such group migrated to Mindanao and spread throughout the island. They were the ancestors of the Manobo that exists in Mindanao to this day. The ancestral Manobo are considered to be the third wave of migration to the country. At the same time that the ancestral Manobo went to the Philippines, other Basal East Asians spread out throughout East Asia. Some went to China and are called the ancestral Cordillerans, while some went to the shrinking Sundaland and are called the ancestral Austroasiatics. From around 12,000 to 8,000 years ago, some Austroasiatics migrated to the southwest of the Philippines and are the ancestors of the Sama found in the area today.
Just makes you think. Imagine how much was actually happening throughout all these years. I mean, just around the planet, period. Game of Thrones stuff, was probably going on everywhere. And then there's the flip side of the coin, which is like this whole theory. What if this was completely wrong and it didn't go down like this? That would be something. But I like to keep an open mind for sure.
Some Sama groups in the Philippines include the Sama Davao and the Sama Dilaut. The Sama are a distinct ethnic group and famous for their sailing skills and oceanic lifestyle. They are considered to be the fourth wave of migration to the country.
This year, she'll be able to find the bright side.
I wonder if that's the tribe that I seen that could dive underwater and be under there for like a long time.
Odds. Get out of here.
Lastly, there were the ancestral Cordillerans. As mentioned earlier, they were the Basal East Asians that arrived in southern China around 12,000 years ago. After the northward migrations of the northern Negritos, southern Negritos, ancestral Manobo, and ancestral Sama, there was the southward migration of ancestral Cordillerans. This migration did not happen all at once, but in pulses and groups throughout 10,000 years ago to 7,000 years ago. This migration was likely triggered by climate change, with the land bridge from China to Taiwan being submerged by rising sea levels. The ancestral Cordillerans are not the Chinese that we know today. The ancestors of the Han Chinese that inhabit the area today arrived around 5,000 years ago after the ancestral Cordillerans already migrated south.
I'm definitely going to be doing my research on ancestral Cordillerans, if I pronounced that correctly. I love history, right? And I love just doing research. It's just something, I guess, it's a passion of mine, right? Just looking at how things used to be and kind of trying to piece together how things are today. I just think it's pretty cool.
They are the fifth wave of migration to the country. The arrival of the ancestral Cordillerans, or Austronesians as they are sometimes called, resulted in mixing with the groups of people that arrived earlier. The language that they spoke, the Austronesian language, became the dominant influence throughout the archipelago. All Filipino languages are classified into the Malayo-Polynesian branch of the Austronesian language family, although there were some words from the languages of the earlier groups that seem to have survived. This only goes to show how widespread their settlement and influence are throughout the Philippines. This also seems to indicate that the Austronesians arrived before the advent of agriculture in the Philippines, meaning that they did not bring it with them when they first arrived. Evidence seems to suggest that agriculture only arrived in the Philippines around 2,500 years ago, so all the waves of migrations that arrived in the Philippines did so as hunter-gatherers. It is important to remember that most of these groups did not live separately. Most of them met with each other, many lived with each other, and often had children together. Most people that live in the Philippines today are not purely part of one group. Another thing to note is that the Philippines was not the final stop for many of these people at the time. Many people continue to travel east to Polynesia and Melanesia. Climate change also seems to have been a major factor into the migration of many of these groups, which only goes to show the power of Mother Nature over humanity. Of course, people did not stop migrating to the Philippines after this time. As we can see, going through Philippine history, multiple groups of people went in and out of the country for various reasons. But that is a story for another day.
I like that video. I like how he seemed to be fair about his studies, and it didn't seem like there was any like biasness or just something weird he could have said. You know, sometimes you watch some videos and some people kind of just say some weird things where you're like, what? But this seemed pretty genuine. It seemed like a genuine genetic study. How I feel is I just feel like it's very interesting. Very interesting. I mean, the the rich history is amazing to me. And just always to see how what I like is at the end how he said, no one no one of the Philippines now comes from a particular group. Everyone's kind of like mixed up from those different groups, which to me makes them more equal. Like everyone kind of shares the same blood. I think that's pretty awesome. But with that being said, guys, let me know history that might not have been mentioned in the comments. So I will be back with more soon. If you're new to the channel, go binge watch my Philippines playlist. And much love, everybody.